So training overview, as we typically do in these trainings, we're going to start out by looking at a PowerPoint and talking in theory, and then we're going to switch over and take a look at the actual application. So we're going to be talking about current use verification and CAMA upload. So you'll have access to both of those modules tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be presenting, and we should also have Chris Mila joining us as well for any NEMRIC related questions. All right, so to get to current use, you're going to start by going to tax program. So it's the same location that the homesteads live in. I want you to see here in my red highlighted section, you can see the count of homestead declarations that you have pending a review, and also the number of current use records that you have available for review. So in this case, no homesteads. So looking at the tax programs, you've got this high level view, how many homestead declarations you have available to verify, and how many current use records you have to verify. So those are important numbers to look at the high level. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. So if we go into tax programs, we'll start talking about current use. So we'll review the main current use screen. We'll talk about how questions work, talk about how you'll verify current use, and then how you'll download current use into your grand list for billing. So the process hasn't really fundamentally changed. All the data is the same. You can ask questions of the current use staff just like you always could in your list of responses. The value information we're looking for is all the same. It's just that you're going to be doing the valuation in VTPIE. So again, looking at this current use, we have the 3 steps: the initial review, the local verification, state certification. We're going to talk about how that process works. So the records start in EQs. So we take them in, it goes to the state initial review. So that's where the PBR current use staff goes in and does their account maintenance and does kind of the final review. As soon as they complete that process, it becomes available for local verification. And we're looking for exactly the same information we always were. So the data has not changed. If you go through local verification and you're just adding values, it goes straight past the state final certification. I'll show you what that looks like. So in other words, if you're not changing the acreage, if you're not proposing a change of span or parcel, and you haven't asked a question of the current use staff, it goes straight through. So if you do propose a parcel change, or if you propose a change to the enrolled or excluded acreage, or if you ask a question, then it needs to go through the state certification process. So that'll be one final review where the state can review the changes you've made and certify it. We will have the ability to export out records that the state hasn't certified yet, so you can use your municipal values to get your property tax bills out. But each of these will go sequentially. As soon as they do their initial review, it'll be available for you. As soon as you complete your local verification, they'll be able to go in and do the state certification if any of these types of changes have been made to the record. Okay, so looking at the current use index, we have the help up here as we always do. Should look very familiar. All the pages kind of look like this. So this works very much like sales. We have up here that our local verification is incomplete. This is our default dropdown. So this is showing us records that are available for us to review and verify. If you were to switch this, you can also look at all of the records. So you can always get access to them if you need to make a change to the valuation because something on the property changed. You can do that. That won't trigger a state review, but if you go in and want to change the acreage because of something you know, that will trigger that 3rd state review. But you can always see all the records, so you can always maintain them accordingly. We have questions just like we have on sales. In this module, though, the questions are 2 ways. So the state can pose questions to you and you can pose questions to the state. They work just like the support module does, just like questions on sales. So you can see here if you have questions and if they've been resolved. The last column here is the flag column. So this is how PBR will let you know if a current use record is under review, meaning it might be changing. So you'll see under review there if that record is under review. As with the sales, you can sort, filter, and all that sort of stuff to get to the particular records you want if you have a span in mind. So taking a look at an individual current use record. So now I've clicked on a record, I'm inside the record. Just like sales, we have our main page. This is where we see all the information we have about the application. We have the properties that are linked. So same as with sales, you can link properties. We also have attachments. So for the new sales, or not sales, excuse me, the new current use enrollments that we're getting from EQs, we're actually getting the applications in PDF form. So the application will be shown there on attachments. And finally, questions, again, just like sales, and I'll highlight it later, but as you're going through and verifying these for the first time, take a look if you have that exclamation point next to the question. That means the state has a question for you. At this stage, it's usually just giving you information about the enrollment, just so that there can be correspondence about this enrollment record. And again, that'll be tagged to this current use record for years, so you'll be able to go back and see all of that. We have our reports down here. So I know your DA is always advised that you print out the current use report. So this is where you'll be able to download into PDF format all the information about your current use record, so you can print that out and put it in the file as it exists. Here we have our grand list information. So just like sales, this is showing the information that we have from the grand list about this current use record. We have our enrollment record here. So this is what came in with the application. You'll see more info there. That will give you a bunch of more detailed information that didn't really fit on the screen too well. So you can click on more info and it will expand out for you. And then we have the status and account. So slight change of terminology where PVR used to have an owner and an owner ID. Now they are accounts. The purpose of the account is to just group related current use records together. So if one person owns multiple current use records, we can group them together by their account and then send them one notification. Finally, we have our notes and info down here. So this is where you'll see probably most useful the excluded land description, so you can determine that. You'll also see unenrollment notes if the property has been unenrolled, municipal notes if you take them, and then you can see the PVR parcel change notes to see why they were making changes to the record. Finally, up here, we have our verify button. So this is where you'll click to verify the information about the current use record. Previous and next will bring you to the previous and next current use record, just like it does with sales. There's a bit more on this screen. It didn't quite fit neatly on the slide, and the stuff below is really informational and largely appears on the next verify screen anyway, so we can look at it when we're in the app once we get to the demo portion. So when I click verify, I'm given some information up top here, just basic information about the enrollment record, the listed value, the improvement value, the land value, and then on the far right, the homestead house site value. One thing I do want to point out is if you do need to change the span, you can use this little pencil icon. It works identically to linking a new record to a sale. You just go in, search for the record that you want to change it to. It'll change to it, and then you'll be all set. Because you've made that change, that will trigger that third review, that state certification, so that they need to confirm that. I want to highlight here that we have this view button for enrolled buildings. So it says we have 0 enrolled buildings, but if we did have some, we could click on view and it would expand out and show us which types of buildings that we had enrolled. So down here is your main valuation table. So this is all the same values that you used to give. So dwelling and non-enrolled farm building, the value of the enrolled farm building, the value of the excluded land, and the value of the enrolled land. All the same. The difference is you'll notice here the homestead column is grayed out because this record does not have a homestead. So it won't let you put data into fields if they're not appropriate. So if we do have a homestead, for example, you're locked out of most of the non-homestead fields. Likewise, enrolled farm buildings have to be non-homestead, so you're never allowed to put values into homestead. There are also a bunch of checks built in here, which we'll talk about. For example, in this case, I have no enrolled buildings. So if I tried to put any value towards enrolled buildings, it would say, no, you don't have any enrolled buildings. You can't have any value associated with that line. When I talk about how you bypass that state certification step, as long as all of these values tied out, so if you have enrolled land, you have a value for enrolled land. If you don't have enrolled land, you have no value. It has to be zero. The total has to match. The total homestead and non-homestead values for the property have to match what you have on your grand list. So as long as we're able to pass all of those math checks, you don't pass go, it goes straight past that state certification. They're comfortable that you haven't changed the acreage, you haven't changed the parcel. All you've done is provided valuation information and made it past all of the checks. So you're good to go. Down at the bottom here, we have our acreage. So this is where, just like you could in NEMRIC, if you need to change the acreage, you can do that. Again, that will trigger that third review by the state to review those acres. And let's just take a closer look at that so you guys can see. So we have our total ag acres. And if I change that, you can see my state acres are 0, and I changed it to be a 1. So that's different. So now I have to choose my acreage change reason and put in a comment about why I am changing that acreage. You also have to, the total acreage has to tie out to the total acreage on the parcel as well from the grand list. So just to get each of these kind of documented a little bit more formally, if there are enrolled farm buildings, enrolled farm building value has to be 0. It has to be greater than 0, excuse me. Reverse is also true. If you don't have them, your value has to be 0. If there's excluded land has to be greater than 0. If there's enrolled land has to be greater than 0. Your total for homestead for your math here has to match your total homestead value. Unlike the prior system, the line totals are automatic. So if you have dwellings and non-enrolled farm buildings, and you have a homestead and you have a split between homestead and non-homestead, it automatically adds up the total for you. So the totals of homestead and non-homestead are always matching. Those are done automatically. All right, let's take a look at a demo here, and then I'm going to give you guys some tips and review some other information here. And I'm going to go into current use. So again, you can see I've verified 3 of the 57 I have available, or 3 that I could verify. The state has done 13. So I'm still missing a bunch. I can only verify the 13 that I have available to me. And a few of the ones that I verified, 2 of them made it right past state certification, and 1 of them did not because I changed the acreage. Go in and take a look here. So again, we have our table that we're used to. We have our help up here. You can search by the span if you have a particular record you want to work with. Only need to put in the last part of the span. You don't need to type out the whole thing. It will search automatically for you. Again, this is my work queue, just like your sales. So you can show all to look at all of your current use records, but it defaults to your local verification incomplete. So this is your work queue. Okay, so here's our main current use screen. And again, just talking through it, this is our grand list information here on the left-hand side. This is our enrollment information. We have more info. There's just a little bit more information there about the record if you need it. The status on the state side and the account information. We have our notes here, so a note about the excluded land that we have. Our property, just like sales, our attachments, so you can add attachments too. I know PVR's plan is to get the maps flowing through in PDF format as well, so that they're here. And then questions work just like sales, except that you can ask a question on your side. If I scroll down, and you can see the information that we have over here, just the valuation information if we have it from last year. We have our acreage information, and you don't need to pay too much attention to this. This is just informational that you can see what came in on the application, what the municipal and the state values are. By default, everybody agrees, but just like sales, we track if things are different. We have our building tab down here. You shouldn't really need to use this. What you really should be doing just from a workflow point of view is coming in, and I think your DA would like you to run your report. I have both because I'm signed up as a super user, but you'll have this PDF report of your parcel information, so you can save this, you can print it off as your DAs usually advise you to do. So we'll go through here, and you'll notice I do have a homestead here. My values have moved over to homestead. You'll notice I can't enter anything into the non-homestead over here. Enrolled farm buildings are always non-homestead, so this will never be enabled whether or not you have a homestead. So if I scroll down a little bit, we have our acreage down here, and we can do a nice easy one here. So maybe you look in, everything looks good. Another thing to highlight is this year, you'll have to go through your past records and verify them. Next year, our hope is that unless you're doing a reval, you can just go through and change things that need to be changed and review new enrollments and change of enrollments and that sort of stuff, and maybe not need to go through every single current use record if there hasn't been any change to it. So we can just save our changes by clicking save. We can save and return. This brings us to the home, and save and verify, just like on sales, will complete the verification for you. I think I showed you here. These are the buildings. So if you want to see the buildings that are there, you can look at them. We have the calculated use value here. This will move between homestead and non-homestead depending on whether or not this parcel is enrolled. But again, this is all the same information you're used to. So if we're done with this, we can just click save and verify, and we're all set. We've moved on to the next record. Go in, look at my report, maybe save that, click on verify. In this case, it looks like we just have enrolled land. So I'll show you the system yelling at you a little bit. We don't have any enrolled farm buildings. So if I tried to say, I have $1 of enrolled farm buildings, save it, it's going to say number one, no, you don't have any enrolled farm buildings. And number two, now this total doesn't match your total non-homestead value because I've added $1. If I put that back down to 0, now it's happy again. So those logical checks that I talked to you about here, those all have to work. The totals have to line up. And the thinking is if you can get past these math checks, you've satisfied everything that we want you to in terms of valuation. Everything logically makes sense. You can bypass that final state certification, which means it's fully done when you're done. It's totally done for the year unless another change happens. As I was talking, I was putting in a value for excluded land. If you look down here, we don't have any excluded land. So it's yelling at me again. So if I go back and zero that back out, now we're happy again. So again, nothing is different in terms of the values that the state is looking for from you, and nothing is different in terms of how you calculate those values. You do it the same way you normally would, determine that valuation in your CAMA, and then this is the same stuff you would input into your grand list. You're just going to put it into VTPIE instead, and then download it into your grand list, which we'll talk about at the end. I'm going to go ahead and save and verify this. So it's moved me on to the next record. If I go back to verify, maybe I want to propose an acreage change. So maybe I've got 3 and I'm going to make it balance. And 69 here. You'll notice down here, all of a sudden I have an acreage change reason. So maybe it was a tax map update. I don't know why that would lead me to exclude land, but just go with it. So if I save it, it's happy, everything's balanced. It updated the use value for my enrolled acreage. But this is going into that third review. So this one will not be done until the state looks at it and approves this change. That being said, when you download your reductions, you'll be able to download the reduction that you put in based on the acreage change that you put in. And there'll just be a flag saying this isn't final yet, the state hasn't certified it. So that can be signified on the bill. So I'm going to save and verify that. Once again, if I go in, the data entry into the software is pretty straightforward. The hard part's valuing the land, particularly if you have excluded land. So I would refer you to your district advisor for how to do that if you're unsure of how to get these values, but they're the exact same values that you would have in NEMRIC. So I'm just going to cancel out of that, return back to the screen. We have map links like we always have, so you can go out and view this parcel. Again, don't forget about this more information, pretty handy. Also map link, pretty handy if this is abutting another town and has a related enrollment in the other town. You can take a look at that. So again, you navigate around just like you would in sales. If I go back here, I've made some progress on my complete and incomplete records. And the idea here is by not requiring PVR to do that final check, As long as you agree on the acreage, you're not changing the span, you're just putting in values and you make it past all of these checks, you're good to go. So it's completely done. So this year, we're getting used to it, but our hope is next year we can get started nice and early, have this workflow of as soon as PVR starts processing applications, they're going to be in your hands. So you guys will have more time to get the work done. We'll bypass that third review step if we can. And if not, PVR will have more time to get that done as well, as this will lighten their workflow. So just to highlight here, you've got your drop down to control what you see, just like you do on sales. We've got our help up here. You can navigate with your breadcrumbs. You can see here I've done 6 of my 57 current use records that are available. So just keep an eye on this number. That's going to let you know when you're done, and then you can see the state certification. You see both of the ones we just verified, made it all the way through. We still have that one pending state certification. So if you imagine the time savings on your part and on PVR's part, you're not going to be passing files back and forth. You're actually going to be working on records one at a time. So these 5 records that say state certified, they are 100% done. No further action required. You saw how long it took us to do. I think we did 3 or 4 of them. The hope is this can get pretty speedy. Talk through a couple things, and then Chris, I'll give you some time if you want to comment on anything as well. So let me just put up the PowerPoint.
So I think it makes most sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that towns would do their CAMA upload first, so they have the most recent information in that parcel screen that they would be viewing, and then also to upload their most recent homestead so they have that status as accurate as possible. Both of those things being in place before they start to process these current use are going to make everything flow a little bit better.
So just some pro tips on how the process kind of works here. As I mentioned, if we don't have a homestead on file, all of your values from last year will be in the non-homestead column, and homestead will not be editable. When we get a homestead, we'll move everything over for you, and we're going to switch that to be locally unverified. So you'll have to take a look at it, but everything should be where it needs to be. We'll move everything over as homestead declarations come in. The only thing you might have to do is if you have a homestead, non-homestead split on the dwelling and enrolled farm building. Obviously, we don't know what that split is. So that's probably where you would have to do the most maintenance, but just keeping an eye on that local verification. And if you have any in your queue there that you can do, that'll be your best way to manage that sort of the workflow. Elizabeth and her staff at PVR have been adding questions to some of the records just as kind of clarifying notes to let you know exactly what changed and why on the application. I'm sure some of them are actually questions. So keep an eye on your questions tab here. It'll have that red exclamation point if there are questions for you. You can also filter by questions on the table, just like you can with sales. So when you do see that, go ahead and just take a peek and see what the questions say. You can reply back to the state as well. And if you have comments that you want to send to the state, you can ask questions of them as well. So this is kind of correspondence that will live on with the current use record as we move through time. So a couple things to be aware of. Chris and I from NEMRIC are working through this current use reduction export. And I do want to, again, stress, we'll get records that have not been state certified as well, so you can do your billing. And they'll just come back again later when they are certified so that you can send out a revised bill if necessary. So we're getting that underway. That's just going to be download the billing. It's going to transfer the current use information to the NEMRIC grand list. You're going to click upload current use, and it's going to pick it up. So very much the same as it used to be, getting data from the state, except you're going to push download in VTPIE and then go into NEMRIC and pick it up. The other thing we have, and I hope this makes people happy, in order to do the change of allocation notices, which are going to be deployed at the end of the month, we need to have a history of all the different changes to the current use record so that we can refer back to what it was if we need to send a change of allocation for a mid-year change or something. So because we have this valuation history, even if the values here on the screen that we're looking at have to be reset, if there's been some sort of a change to the enrollment that you have to revalue it, They removed excluded land, added it, you know, buildings, whatever. You will be able to look at that value history. So it's just going to be a little link. We should have that in probably next week, where you click on the link and it will just bring you up the valuation history. So you won't lose those values that you've worked so hard to generate. You'll be able to refer back to them as a baseline if you need to do updates. Chris, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, sorry I was late. I lost my internet connection and when we started, so that's always convenient. No, it all looks pretty familiar to me. I hope that the end users are seeing the correlation between what they did in their grand list programs last year, where the current use data was downloaded into their grand list program. They worked in current use. The questions are the same. I would say at this juncture, have your CAMA program up at the same time as you have your current use file up and put them side by side so that when you want to put in how much your dwelling and non-enrolled farm building value is, you can type that in. And your excluded land, you can use your current use calculator to calculate your enrolled land and excluded land. Very similar to what you did last year. With the exception of, you know, when you change a value on a parcel in NEMRIC and CAMA, it automatically flowed over to your grand list. That part's still the same. And just like always, when you change the value, you would have to go into the current use program and manually update that value. As time progresses, we hope that we can just send a file to VTPIE that updates that information for you, so you don't have to double enter it. But to get going, this is the way you're going to have to do it to start. I think that's about all I have to add for comment on this at this point.
All right, so let's talk about your CAMA upload. So each vendor has developed a report, instructions on how to run them are online. And I'll show you where those are. Same place, click the eye icon. And the instructions have come directly from the vendors. So we have screenshots and kind of a step-by-step. I did want to highlight this year, this CAMA upload is only going to be used for homesteads, current use, and sales verification. So you will not develop your grand list with this. You will not use it for billing. It won't generate your 411. We'll use the 411 generated out of your grand list as we did last year. We'll import that into VTPIE, so that will be used for equalization. So I'm going to show you how you can check the values as they come in with our abstract report. But the reason I'm mentioning this is if the record doesn't have a sale, current use, or a homestead, it's just in the database. So it's really those records that are going to impact your lives this year. So if something looks funny, we definitely want to get to the bottom of it and make sure that everything is sorted out for next year. And I'll show you how we can do that. So once again, we have our help here at the top. We have our status here of our upload. And this is a batch process, so it takes about 5 minutes maybe to run. So this is a type of thing where you'll get your export out of your CAMA and just a couple button pushes to do that. Grab the file and upload it, and then go refill your coffee, refresh the page. And once this says processed, you're done. And I'll show you how to look at that as well. If it's been more than 10 minutes and you don't see process, that's the time to call support. We can pull that file down, take a look at it with you, and see what might be going on. We also have our abstract here. So this is one of the user suggestions we got in our first sessions a while ago. So I'll show you the abstract is basically just the top of the 411. So same format you're used to here. We've got your land use code, and this is all the property you're giving us, taxable and non-taxable. You can see we don't have any homesteads shown here in this test data, but I guess good to bring up. As you upload your data, we are going to look to see if we have any active homestead records for that property, and that's how we're going to set your homestead, non-homestead value. So that will happen both on the way in. When you upload CAMA, we'll upload that or update that, excuse me. And as we take in homestead files, the schedule for homestead is still the same. It's once a week. So as those come in, we look at CAMA and VTPIE and flip those switches accordingly. So if a homestead comes in for a property, we'll set the homestead value for that property. So taking a look at how the upload works. So first you select the type of upload that you have. And I'll show you the types. It's basically a working grand list, which you'll do most of the time, or one of your more official copies. The August submission or the January submission are really the two that PBR cares about. So if you put that it's one of those, we're going to archive it as that kind of special type of submission. Step 2 is what you want to update from your CAMA system. You want to update everything this first time. So you can update your parcels, so span, parcel ID, address. You can update your owners, your owner name and mailing address, or you can update your values, or all three. This is going to become more important next year when VTPIE becomes the source of your grand list. You're not going to want to update your owners after you get them finalized for April 1st. For this year, it's not as important because we're not going to be generating your grand list. So by default, all three, once you've got it uploaded the first time, you can remove, don't click owner, so you keep your owners as they were on April 1st. Then you just browse for a file, just like an email attachment, find the file that you want to attach and upload it. You can put some notes here to yourself, and you can see those in the table, just kind of for your own reference if you're doing this a bunch so you can see why you uploaded something. We'll talk about frequency of upload here as well in just a minute, because that's an important topic. We have messages. I'll show you how to get to that. So you can see how many total records we've processed, where it is in the process, and if there are any errors, it will tell you what the errors are. So for example, like in some of the sample files we've seen, real property records come through without a category code. And it'll say, found 5 records with no category code. And I'll show you how you can download the file that you upload and take a peek at it and see what might be going wrong. So you definitely want to have your CAMA export uploaded by May 1, so you have enough time to process everything. I think most of you will get it done sooner than that. We've worked with Nemrick, Patriot, ProVal, and Vision on this. And I think with most of, I think all the CAMA vendors, all we're left with are just kind of data issues because we haven't looked at data in this manner. So we have some time to get that straightened away. Some things aren't in CAMA, but we don't need everything this year. So we're just going to get started and build upon this. And again, just using this for current use, sales, and your homesteads. So let me just do a demonstration here. So I'm going to go in here. We're going to go to Grand List Management. We can see the last time this was uploaded. This was Chris and I testing a little while ago. So if we go into Grand List Management, we go into Upload Management, we can see this record had an error. It didn't make it to process. Tried it again, got it to go. We can view our abstract. So again, once you've processed everything, you can view it here. So this will let you kind of cross-check. Again, this is taxable and non-taxable. So these are the total totals. So I can view my messages. This just shows you what's happening. So I processed 759 records. 59 of them were new, and we updated 739. So we're starting with your 2022 grand list as the basis. So 59 records were added, and we updated the rest based on that file. You can also download the file. So we save all of the files that you upload. So you can always download that snapshot and see exactly what it looked like at that time. So if we go in, going to upload a file, you're just going to pick working grand list. You're going to pick all of them. We just did this one, so I don't have a different file. It also won't let you upload the same file twice. So if you try to upload exactly the same thing, it's going to tell you that you've already uploaded exactly that file before. So you browse for the file, you pick the file, and just click upload. And then wait, like I said, about every 5 minutes, you'll eventually get to this step. You can check your abstract and you should be good to go. So I'm just going to switch back over to the PowerPoint here, and Chris, I'll let you add in, or Christy, if you'd like to add in other items here as well. So just the high level stuff, like Christy said, good idea to upload your CAMA before you get started so you have the most up-to-date information. After that, really, I would just upload it before you do your work in VTPIE. If you've made changes, if you haven't touched anything CAMA in 2 weeks, so you have no changes, obviously you don't need to upload anything to us. But generally, it makes it easier to just upload before you do your work, so you have up-to-date information. And it'll just make the process go a little bit more smoothly. If you need a new account, you can do request.vtpie.org. If you have clerks in your office that also need access to this, probably for homestead more than current use, you can have them use that link as well to request an account. and you'll get your support email. I think most of the people on this call have their account already. So where do you go for help? We've got our support page. We have our support email and telephone numbers. As we always say, Axiomatic can help you with the application. So if you're having a hard time verifying current use, you know exactly what you want to do. You can't make the program do it. That would be Axiomatic tech support. If you don't know how to value that excluded land, I am not going to be of any use to you at all. So you'd have to call your district advisor for help with that. And of course, your CAMA vendors for help getting that export out. And of course, NEMRIC for grand list, like always. And Chris, I'll let you add anything that you'd like to.
Yes, so anything that is related to the grand list and CAMA. And NEMRIC is not going to dip into the VTPIE realm. We're going to refer those questions back to Patrick's staff, because they're the ones that created the software. I mean, we have obviously a concept, and I've gone through the software, and I think I've got a pretty good handle on where things live and how they're gonna work. I see a lot of questions in the chat, and some of it's going to get a little more clear as we start moving data back and forth. So right now, Patrick and I are wrapping up what we need to do to start data flowing, and you can always, homestead decks, you've been able to review them. If you want to do cross checks and stuff, like I said, just have the two systems up side by side so you can verify what you have right now, and we'll move on from there. And as we find places where we can improve, Patrick and I will make improvements as we go along.